Hello, thank you for joining us. You're listening to a special edition of Mobility Insights, an ISE podcast. Presented by ISE Magazine and AT&T Mobility. ISE equals ICT Solutions and Education.
Hello, this is Janice Oliva, President of ISE Magazine, with a very special edition of Mobility Insights, brought to you by ISE, AT&T Mobility, and our sponsor, Luxoft. Today, our guest is Terry Blanck, the Director of Digital Blueprints and Service Offerings. Terry has over 40 years of experience in information technology with Fortune 500 companies and startups, with broad and deep exposure in different technologies and industries. His specialties include cloud-native platforms, AI, ML, IoT platforms, management consulting, enterprise architecture, business intelligence, and data warehousing, along with big data, data science, leadership, agile program project management, net Java development, and quality assurance. Quite a lot he has covered for sure. I think he's going to provide excellent content for us today. And thank you, Terry, so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
You bet. I'm really happy to be here to join you. Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, today we're going to be discussing specifically disruptive innovation as a catalyst for digital transformation. How we can use the opportunities presented by emerging technologies to shape the way we solve our business problems. So we're going to go into how transformation or transforming legacy systems and processes to become more agile and cloud-driven by integrating next-gen tech solutions such as SDN and NFV, IoT, AI, ML, chatbots, and even blockchain, applying these innovations in a way that changes the paradigm of the original problem being addressed. So smartphones are a great example of technology that has not only transformed voice communication, but has also shifted how we interact with data on a daily basis, with far-reaching business model and social impacts, as we have all experienced. So Terry, we've got a lot of ground to cover, but first, let's kind of start with the basics. What do you mean by disruptive innovation?
So, that's a great question. And when people think about innovation, they often think about, a scientist in a lab or somebody in a garage, an inventor who comes up with a new idea or something novel. And, it's really more than that. And innovation can be incremental in terms of, an existing product or service that, companies continue to add value to and continue to hopefully make money on for the long term. But when you think about disruptive innovation, you're talking about addressing a new market or perhaps an underserved market with something that is brand new, that has never been done before, by maybe applying existing technologies or existing services in a way that nobody's thought of before. And so that's how startups and companies come into new markets where it maybe wasn't even envisioned before, and technology is often at the core of that. You mentioned smartphones. It's a great example of that, where, when I was a kid back in growing up in the 60s, a phone was something that you went to where the phone was to have voice communications with someone. And, peripherally, we understood, I think, that there was a physical connected network that supported that communication. But even in those days where if there wasn't a phone available, communication could take days or sometimes even weeks to go around the world. Smartphones really changed that dynamic and were disruptive because phones, anyone growing up in the last 20 years doesn't even consider a phone a communication device anymore. It's for entertainment, or it's for social media applications, or it's a personal productivity tool. And so the whole idea of what a phone is has morphed and changed not only business, but society as a whole.
Absolutely. You mentioned you had to go to your phone when you were younger. I will never forget. We had at my home a beautiful phone. It was a pink rotary phone. It was kind of like the prize of the household. If that phone could be near you, you were a lucky person to be able to pick up that phone and feel like a movie star. I remember that. But you're right. Technology, especially with the cell phones, I almost refer to my cell phone as my computer anymore because everything is on there. Everything from my security system to my TV remote, my Wi-Fi, all of my files from work. It's a great tool. And that kind of brings us back to transformation. So how does Luxoft approach this digital transformation?
Well, I think digital transformation is another one of those marketecture terms, as I refer to them, right? When you think of, just like when you think of innovation, transformation can be either optimization, where you're simply, incrementally improving something. For instance, lowering the cost of a service in your information technology platform. Or it can be transformational, which means, like the smartphone example, companies have actually changed their entire business models. Companies that used to be, purely telecoms that, ran networks are now media and content companies. And so transformation is about not just the technology aspect of it, but also transforming the business model and the strategies that companies go to market with. And so the way Luxoft looks at it is kind of like an enterprise architect looks at it, and that's, a lot of my background is based on that, where we have to understand the business architecture, which is the business model and strategy and the processes and structure that a company goes to market with, as well as the intersecting technology, which underlies almost everything nowadays in business, and how technology can be used to change that dynamic, to make that disruptive innovation, not just within an industry, but applying solutions across industries that may offer new opportunities for companies. So Luxoft tries to look for patterns and what we call blueprints. Much like an architect who builds buildings, we try to capture these patterns as reusable IP, if you will, so that we can develop solution accelerators to help companies apply these technologies to all kinds of different business problems. And we offer services around those as well to help companies along that journey of digital transformation.
I love the visual of the blueprint because it ties directly into what we are always talking about, which is our network architecture, right? Makes so much sense. So I love that analogy to this business strategy with your customers. Excellent. Excellent. So before we go on, I feel like we should tell our listeners a little bit more about your company. Luxoft is a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange and a global IT service provider of innovative technology solutions that deliver measurable business outcomes to multinational companies. You work with strategic consulting, custom software development services, and digital solution engineering. And Luxoft enables companies to compete by leveraging your multi-industry expertise, which is in financial services. You work in automotive, communications, healthcare, and life science sectors. And you manage delivery model. It's underpinned by your highly educated workforce, which is great and diverse in all those different verticals, allowing your company to continuously innovate upward in the technology stack to meet evolving digital challenges. Luxoft Digital enables monumental changes to establish patterns through the application of innovative technology, like you referred to in the blueprint concept. And your services help the customers start faster, learn more quickly, and deliver value sooner. And you have more than 13,000 employees across 41 cities in 20 countries within the 5 continents. With your operating headquarters is one of my favorite places. One of the Switzerland is actually in the city of Zug, Switzerland. So for more information on Luxoft, please visit their website. You can find that online. And it's good to have that background because it really provides people a great platform to understand your talents and services. So I wanted to get that to our listeners. But let's continue on. What innovative technologies do you see driving transformation within our industry?
Well, interestingly, technology is kind of industry or sector agnostic, and you find that these technologies can be applied to a whole host of different scenarios. So we maintain what we call an innovation agenda, and as you can imagine, it's continuously evolving, as the new technologies come to fore. And, there's typical R&D kind of behavior that we do as well. Folks are probably familiar with things like the hype curve and things like that. And we also get feedback from our clients as to what their particular business problems are and look for ways to apply cross-industry, different technologies to different solutions that, we may not have thought of before, or they may not have thought of before as well. So a lot of different inputs go into our innovation agenda. And so some of the things that we're looking at in the last 6 to 8 months are around this theme of connection, where we're looking to connect workforce or operations, customers, or products, and build into products and services as well. So some of the technologies that support those kind of scenarios are things like AI, ML, and so that should be of no surprise to anybody. And so we have blueprints around things like Chat AI, which is kind of the next generation of chatbots, but imbued and infused with cognitive type of intelligence. And there's a whole host of scenarios, call center scenarios, for instance, and things like that, which are cross-industry, as well as personal assistants that are now very popular, and a lot of our clients are asking for that. They kind of bled over from the consumer area into the business realm. Other areas, as you mentioned, we're looking at are distributed ledger and blockchain. So the idea of things like distributed identity management is one of our blueprints, as well as the idea of smart contracts. And so it isn't just in financial services, but you're seeing this in areas like healthcare, energy and utilities, as well as telecom. So again, these are cross-sector, cross-industry kinds of blueprints and solutions. But the variations will be specific scenarios that serve those particular industries. Another popular one is what we call edge to insight. This idea of processing at the edge, which is becoming technology-wise very much more viable. So it's connecting intermittently the cloud where it makes sense to do that kind of processing, but also being able to connect on devices wherever you happen to be when you're not connected. And so it's not only a cost issue, but it's also, a latency issue. You don't want to be connecting to the cloud when you're driving down the road in a car, waiting for it to identify obstacles. So it makes more sense to do that processing on the edge. And there's a whole other, range of things that are a little more out there in terms of computer vision, mixed reality, and areas like that we're looking at as well.
Yeah, there is a lot of things coming down the road, and I'm showing my my big picture capabilities here. But I know when you mentioned AI, ML, artificial intelligence, AI, but I do not know ML. That's a new one for me. Can you tell us what that stands for?
Sure, and sorry for the spaghetti jargon. So I am a tech guy. So ML stands for machine learning. And, very closely related to that are what are called cognitive services. And cognitive services are essentially services that emulate humans. So that's how chat, for instance, can be used as a proxy sometimes for humans and emulate the behavior of them. And that makes the AI more human-like. Very closely related to that is what's called deep learning, which essentially is a problem-solving application of machine learning in that, large networks to solve intense problems. And so, yeah, it's it's a growing science, and it's starting to become very applicable to real-world problems.
Yeah, I should have known that, ML, but you're right. We do have a lot of acronyms within our industry, so that actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, and recently there was a show in Chicago, ITW, the global telecom show. One of my colleagues, president of a cable company, actually was there, and he was telling me that, and I saw it online. I went and looked for it. There was an actual, a human robot who was able to do that. Machine learning and have the artificial intelligence and could interact, and she had an interview on their stage. So talk about a really big jump to the machine learning, but she had that. And you mentioned so many great things about, for being a tech guy, you talk really down to earth with us people who are not in the tech, specialty arena, but the smart contracts, edge to insight, so many neat things. Now, with all of that comes security. And that's one of my big hot spots with our industry is the security. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a great question. And especially with companies moving to the cloud, we get that question a lot. So in terms of, data at rest or data in flight, we have a number of white papers that we've written and frameworks that we've developed with GDPR going live here in a couple of weeks. That's a real big concern, not only in Europe, but also in the United States. And so the cloud providers that we tend to work with have addressed this problem really well in terms of the security aspect. And we add on to kind of those platforms and how seriously they take the problems as well with our own frameworks and our own approaches to encrypting data, to tokenizing data. Those are some of the terminology we use so that customer private data or personal identifiable data, such as in healthcare and some other industries, are protected by the particular regulations in question. So that's a really common question, and I think the state of the art today has gotten a lot better in terms of addressing security and data privacy in general.
Right. Yeah, our company is dealing with GDPR, and for those of you who are not in the data privacy arena, that basically says that the EU has determined that people have the right to their data, privacy for their data, and the right to be forgotten. So if, which is rare, we're always giving all this data, but now it's gotten really tight, and they're going to be coming down on companies if they don't offer that. So I know AT&T's got that taken care of, I'm sure. We are doing it as well. So it's a big issue. Well, this has been so good. I've really liked it. The other one topic, though, I'd love to hear you share your thoughts on is two areas where I've heard some people leading the industry talk about a fourth industrial revolution. And they've talked about blockchain with that, which involves data and security. And they've said 5G, which involves the edge to insight, which you've mentioned. So talk to me about, or share your comments on, what you see as this fourth industrial revolution, what you see entangled in that, because I think it's going to affect our industry the most as far as, all the verticals you work with, but I think telecom is that backbone to make all those other industries be able to go in that direction.
I think both of the topics you mentioned are, tangential in that the application of AI at the edge, and you mentioned robotics as well earlier, are going to be common themes that you're going to see. In terms of 5G and the rollout of 5G, you're seeing this concept of micro networks, which is the idea that of smart cities and even, smart plants where there are computing and autonomous implementations of networks that can function on their own, semi-autonomously. And so the ability to apply, AI at the edge like that to make those systems smarter and able not only to carry data and communication, but the processing and compute power at the edge, so to speak, on those networks is going to be a big revolution in terms of how business is done, how communities work, how people interact with those networks. Blockchain and smart networks, the whole concept of blockchain is this idea of a decentralized a linkage of services that's immutable and trusted. It isn't owned by any one company. And so the ability to have intelligence in that chain to be able to do transactions for a business in a secure way is going to be really important to the growth of not only blockchain, but commerce in general and how we interact as a society. So the security of that blockchain and the idea of having decentralized identity management is going to be a really important facet in that, and that's why we're focusing on it.
Yeah, that's great. It is fascinating, but a whole nother topic I think we could probably talk about. And this has been very helpful, and I hope that our listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you, Terry, very much for being with us. And I know that your expertise and insight is probably just an inkling of what you could share. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Terry via his email, which I will have you share now, if you would.
Sure, it's tblanck@luxoft.com. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Luxoft is Luxoft. You'll see that on the link that you connected to. So please be sure also to click that heart to subscribe. You'll be notified of any new podcasts and episodes of ISE AT&T's special editions of Mobility Insights. Have a great day.
The most trusted resource for professionals across the ICT industry now brings you custom podcasts and webinars for learning on the go. Hear from industry experts and get exclusive author insights only at isemag.com.